You know how you can always tell what type of media, art, what BU, your local neurodivergent fiend has been consuming based on what they've most recently put out and created? Yeah, well, fuck you! Welcome to Metal Gear Solid. Not Metal Gear Solid, of course, nor Metal Gear Solid Integral, Twin Snakes, or any other retelling, port, remake iteration of Metal Gear, but rather Ghost Babel, the one for the Game Boy. You can tell it's a Game Boy game, mind you, because it happens to have the acronym GB hidden ever so slightly in its title. Something sweet game developers used to do when they were proud to be making a portable side entry. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrows, Resident Evil Deadly Silence, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. Fuck, I guess devs at the time were just happy to exclaim their DSS-ness, as I would also be. But yes, Gloria's first portable venture for our hero Solid Snake. Something that is considered quite a bit of a novelty in this day and age, where you can play literally every Metal Gear game on the go. Except Metal Gear Solid 4, of course, which you can't play anywhere. This was my childhood portable venture featuring the Snake, which you can bet utterly confuddled me when I played Sons of Liberty. Granted, my first was actually Snake Eater, so I was already thrown headfirst into the canonical Kojima narrative canon of death, so I could handle that trauma strain. This game, therefore, is instilled within the addles of my brain, and further within the addles of my childhood. So it breaks my heart that more information regarding its gratitude isn't available online. This shouldn't be considered an esoteric side game. This is a quality chiller, mate, full stop. In fact, I'm not entirely sure why it's even considered obscure in the first place. It's among the best the Game Boy Color had to offer, which is honestly pretty high praise. This handheld is nigh perfection, only outclassed by its followers, GBA, DS, 3DS, and the Switch. Nintendo has never failed with their portable handheld McGee's. Let's not stray off point. At least, not too far anyway. Fuck, this game is rad, and I just want to talk about my weird knowledge surrounding it that you, dear viewer, most likely won't have known, nor cared to have known about before. Hell, you probably won't care after. So today, without further ado, let's hop straight into this. Ah, yeah, that's right. This game was still written in part by the Koji God himself. So, we have a wee bit of time to kill before we can hop into this one, mate. So instead, let's talk conception. God damn it, Kojima, you've ruined my word association. Promptly put, the bastards in the EU were hooked on that gray brick, the Game Boy, and in tandem with wanting more of that good Metal Gear crack after the success of Metal Gear Solid PSX in 1998, Konami of Europe demanded that their home branch begin work on a suitable port for a handheld entry in the series. And they wanted this a mere 2 years later. This was quite unprecedented in terms of release, and the fact that the overseas branch was the one spurring the development and all. It's rare for the extension to be the ones requesting the creation of a project, especially for a IP as grand as Metal Gear Solid. As Konami of Europe wished, the game began development as intended, as a straight-up port of that PSX Metal Gear Solid. However, the game immediately ramped off the proverbial cliff's ledge, as was expected by any team tasked with putting this
Stealth camouflage? Who are you?
Where is my friend?
What? What are you talking about? Oh, what next?
on a system whose closest facade of 3D graphic fidelity was this. The divergence in, well, sanity-based necessity for the creatives resulted in this wonderful reimagining of a sequel to the original Metal Gear. Not a sequel to Metal Gear 2, mind you, just a sequel to that OG-MG. God, this is more complicated than necessary. This case of mild Halloween timeline-itis, it's a real condition, is probably credited in large part to the fact that the rest of the world wasn't graced with that MSX to MG2 initially. That is until the revamped re-release of Snake Eater, Substance, came out. However, we never needed that rubbish MSX2 Metal Gear 2 game here in the West regardless. We had Snake's Revenge, baby! Disclaimer, in case you actually don't know, Metal Gear 2 is awesome, and Snake's Revenge is the true rubby. This all comes to create what we know here in the West as Metal Gear Solid, and what is known in Japan as Metal Gear Ghost Babel, which is irrefutably the much cooler, much more ratifying name. What does Ghost Babel even mean? Fuck if I know. It sounds rad and has the GB initials as mentioned before, and that's really all that matters when creating a subtitle. I also couldn't find anything questioning the subtitles outside of this random forum post from the irrefutable all holy knowledge hole that be some random 12-year-old post from GameFAQs. So we'll just have to settle for what they claim, because I don't trust my own opinion. According to one Zepster497, I swear numbers used to be cool to include in your name, Ghost most likely refers to the Black Chamber, Ghost Babel's knockoff Foxhound unit for all intents and purposes, as they sort of metaphorically represent the Ghost of Foxhound's concept that haunted over the game, and undoubtedly Kojima's writer's mind. As for me, I think it's just because you hunt down ghosts in Special Mission 6-3, which is unlocked post-game completion, because we know Kojima loves including vital information for the main story after you beat the fucking game. As for the latter part, what does Babel mean? It's just cool sometimes to make left field religious references without them actually amounting to any substantial meaning. What does have a weird sense of imbued meaning, or at least imbued feeling, in every movement is the pixel art that Ghost Babel proudly boasts. Fuck me, my Segway game was on point with that one. Pixel art that would make any Game Boy fan's mind burst. Pixel art I wholly created, if this Famitsu interview is anything to go by Ikuya Nakamura. It's mind-meltingly smooth. Like, how the fuck was the Game Boy Color capable of producing something this creamy smooth? Seriously, I wouldn't have doubted you for a moment if you told me that this was actually an early Game Boy Advance game. Like, that's how good the pixel animation is. The sprite art created by Ikuya Nakamura is seriously some of the best ever created. Not just on the Game Boy Color, but in general. Just look at how smooth Snake's stride is as he runs. The enemy animations, the flow as the floors pass on the elevator, even down to just the VR mission's waypoint markers. Each little thing has some sense of imbued animated life thrown in. Life that I didn't know the Game Boy Color was even capable of producing. I mean, it's a Game Boy. A bloody fucking Game Boy. Nakamura is beyond a mad lad. You know, you really shouldn't expect any less, though, from the esteemed quality direction director of Frogger and the Rumbling Ruins. Or, okay, maybe a bit more pertinently, the artist behind the just as lovely Boktai The Sun Is In Your Hand on the Game Boy Advance. God, this game looks like such a good time. I gotta chill with it. VR missions, a mainstay of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, are also here. And by here, I mean stuffed to the brim, as this cartridge somehow holds a mind-boggling 180 VR missions. And that's on top of the story missions. They had to create an entire separate game dedicated to this on the PSX, and here they just included them for shits giggles. However, outside of the ludicrous amount they included within the game, they really aren't that interesting to explore. Trials of sneaking, time, shooting, etc. Just additional junk to stuff in your face for a substanceless dessert post-gourmet. No more, no less. I guess it is kind of neat, at least in concept, that these VR missions start out being just straight up complete carbon copies of their PSX brethren's layout, only difference being that they're realized in full 2D fidelity. However, they don't stay that way, and they expand and develop into their own. It's kinda neat. I guess what I find the most intriguing aspect of them, as I mentioned before, is just how the team managed to cast some Witcher 3-esque CD Projekt Red voodoo shit and cram all of them into a standard 16-bit Game Boy Color cartridge. It's wild. A typical Game Boy cart included around 16 megabits of data for storing a game. And yes, for Ghost Babel, that's what we received in the West as well, and actually what they received in Japan. However, in Europe, they actually got a slightly more costly 32 megabit ROM. This was actually nothing short of a requirement for the PAL version, as the game needed the excess space to house more language data for those multilingual European blokes that just happen to inhabit, like, at least a fifth of the world. This larger sized ROM is notable solely because it allowed the devs a rather unique opportunity to incorporate a completely arbitrary, unnecessary piece of hidden content. This content is just an in-game fictitious radio play. Yeah, you heard that right, a radio play. Look, they had to fill that excess empty space somehow, okay? This radio play is called Idea Spy 2.5, and it spans out over the course of the 13 stages provided within the game via hidden codec calls. It also serves as a bit of post-game content, since it can actually only be activated after having beaten the entire game at least once. Honestly, this isn't all out there of a concept, at least not for the Metal Gear dev team, as many hidden codec treats and combos were included in that priorly released Metal Gear Solid. It's just the idea that it's a fucking in-world fictional radio play of all things. Europe got this radio play because they had overflowing cartridge space. Japan got this radio play because their language is very compressed and literally takes up less character and language space. Kanji can convey many more ideas with way fewer characters, unlike English, which requires one character per letter, thus resulting in a language that takes up less space. However, here in America, we had the smaller 16 megabit cart and a rather fittingly beefy language, and thus only 8 of the 13 parts could feasibly fit before the cart exploded. We're Americans, though. We don't need that Orson Welles compelling story peddling junk. We don't need the larger cart size for other languages. I mean, why would we ever need to read other languages when we have the best language, American? Nah, I wouldn't make the same joke 3 times in a row. Psych! What is the story of that radio play? I'm glad you asked, because certainly no one else is. The story follows an agent named Tuhan, 2.5 localized over here. 2.5 must infiltrate an evil corporation's headquarters. And you know that this corporation is unambiguously evil, because they sell junkier than junky junk to the mass of mindless consumers. Oh, the horror. This, insanely enough, went on to actually become a real radio drama, with Hideo Kojima filling the voice role of the titular Tuhan. Unsurprisingly, the play's episodes, of which there were 13 just like in the game, were released by Kojima on his own website weekly, between August and November of 2006. In between the episodes' postings, they were then actually removed right before the next one was posted, because, I don't know, limited consumption is fun. Luckily, to our ears' solace, these episodes aren't lost time, because upon a 2-CD set entitled Hideo-chan, Radio 2.2 Han Princess Singles, plus music and drama CD houses the entire play, and for a measly 2,900 yen. What a steal! Honestly, as ridiculous as it is to say, This CD is way cooler than it has any right to be. I mean, upon learning of its very existence, I now have an inexplicable urge to acquire a physical copy and just behold it in person. Completely inexplicable, mind you. Earlier in the video, you probably undoubtedly noticed that I committed the video maker's cardinal sin of randomly mentioning some Famitsu article without giving any further elaboration or citation. I fully created if this Famitsu interview is anything to go by. Yeah, well, fuck you for thinking that I wouldn't elaborate on this or cite my sources. Cite your sources, people, please. Here's that fucking article and some tidbits from the neat little interview therein. Featured in Weekly Famitsu number 572, the four most prominent members of Ghost Babel's dev team are interviewed in a pre-release promo for the title. Within this interview, many normal things that many normal humans would say are said, as expected of those among the video game creation profession. Among these normal things are the priorly mentioned process of Nakamura decreasing his personal lifespan pixel by pixel, or that Slasher Hawk, one of the prominent members of Black Chamber, had the initial quirk that he ate dugongs, which are essentially manatees with differently shaped tails, or that they named the two dolls that another Black Chamber member holds, Marionette Owl, after the main characters from the Love Suicides at Amijima, which itself is a very old 1721 theater play, known for being among the best ever produced. The dolls' names are Osan and Koharu, respectively. Or that, according to Kojima, Shinta no Jiri is our own Keanu Reeves.
Greetings, my excellent friends.
Do you know when the Mongols ruled China?
Honestly, I was gonna just utterly tear down this comment and make fun of it, but at the time, The Matrix had just been released. So, yeah, that compliment makes perfect sense. However, if I had to single out any one quote therein, it would no doubt be Kojima's utter bonkers statement that not having a theme in Metal Gear Ghost Babel would be like running around a public park holding a knife. Allowing such a thing would be dangerous. That's why after we allow players to run around with a weapon, we preach to them at the end and say to them, this is how you use that knife. Kojima, sir, what the fuck does that mean? Alright, enough interview external junk. Let's move on to game internal junk. Special missions. They suck. Okay, not really. However, outside of a scant special few exceptions, most of these just involve finishing the stages under time limits, or high alert status, or with damage limits, or step limits, or fuck, even idle time limits. Like, yeah, I like being limited as much as the next mate, but the game already ranks you in its base mission, ranks you on things like time. So why do I need an entire mission dedicated to it? And on top of that, I'm basically already making my way through playing the game by sprinting everywhere in endless high alert, trying to get damage as little as possible. I don't need dedicated missions to tell me to suck at the game, but purposefully. I'm already doing that. But you know, not intentionally. I'm not saying these special stages needed to be anything more complex either. I mean, just look at Special Stage 2-3. It's a prime example, and it's just completing the stage backwards. That's it. Simple. Let me just play the game in manners it wasn't designed to be. That's where some of the most fun post-game post-fun lies. However, as I mentioned, not all the special stages blow utter cocksbollocks. There are some rather cool exceptions. The priorly mentioned stage reverse run of 1-3, 6-3 where you do some ghost busting in the pitch black darkness, 9-2 and 3 where they force you to use different methods of blowing up the tanker, and 10-3, which is my favorite and is the most special of the special specials, because you are given the sole objective of finishing a standard trek through, but with a surprise at the end. Yeah, it turns out that this special surprise is none other than a Metal Gear-assified rendition of motherfucking Donkey Kong. While the mechanics are a bit janky, I can overlook that, because you get to enjoy the perils of avoiding bouncing barrels, all the while a bumping bop of a remixed, reduxed 25M plays in the background. It's rad! Only downside is, it's only about a minute or two long. But, you know, even a smidgen of a sweet treat gives more taste than a bland one. So, even though brief, I couldn't be more giddy that it is included. It just brings a grin to my smug mug. One last note on those special missions, and honestly probably the only reason you might have heard of their existence, or this game in general, is because upon completion of the final one, they give an utter awesome mic drop that Jack the Raiden Ripper's inclusion in Metal Gear Solid 2 exists. They confirmed Raiden's existence before the world even knew they should have been confuddled about it. It's just so cool. So cool. However, true fans of the Metal Gear franchise know that this is not actually an allusion to Metal Gear Solid 2. It is actually an allusion to the best filet mignon simulator ever created, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Funnily enough, this Raiden reference in Metal Gear Solid 2 isn't even the only connecting factor that exists between the games. In that there Metal Gear Solid 2, you can actually find a poster with Metal Gear Ghost Babel's cover art quite out in the open in the Shell 1 core computer room. However, the way cooler reference, what I actually think tops the reference of Jack and Ghost Babel himself, is the Colonel's mention of infiltrating Fortress Glade to Raiden in the game's demo loop. Why isn't that ever talked about? It's practically confirming that superfluous canonicity that we care about way too much. Finally, just to conclude this bit on references between, there's also a reference in one of the best insert adjective here cutscenes ever made. Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. It lies within the description of the 5.7, the only handgun available to players in Ghost Babel, and it simply states, also used by Snake when he infiltrated Glade. Wait, fuck. This reference is in a mainline entry? That contradicts canonicity. If Ghost Babel was the virtual training Raiden underwent, even under the facade of Snake, then it really wouldn't have involved the real Solid Snake in any capacity, and therefore he shouldn't have any knowledge of the gun. In fact, since it didn't involve the real Solid Snake in any capacity, and Raiden was apparently that Snake, because Snake wasn't Snake, it shouldn't even mention Snake being involved in that operation as a whole, as it didn't happen anywhere but the virtual space of some random black cube. Fuck. Get me that motherfucker Kojima on the line. Oh, what did I mean by black cube? You're in for an utter treat of a doozy, mate. Within Metal Gear Solid 2 substance lies some extra Solid Snakey Boy missions called, aptly, Snake Tales. Within those Snake Tales, we are given some wonderful, but completely confuddling content. Pulled straight from the fandom wiki itself, obligatory fuck fandom, the Copplethorne engine is a quantum calculation system, the Copplethorne engine being the VR system that Raiden uses. How it is able to function is a mystery. It is shaped like a black box, with insides only holding some kind of circuitry, gears, and iron-like spheres. Pseudoscientists have only been able to come up with theories that is powered by technology from extraterrestrial beings, or a long-lost civilization. Interjection here. Yes, you heard that right. Pseudoscientists have officially stated that it comes from extraterrestrial beings. Like, pseudoscientists. Fuck me. That is rather fitting, isn't it? This alien derivative info is completely conjecture from literally fake as fuck scientists. Anyway, back to it. The Copplethorne engine doesn't simply create virtual reality tests, but can actually manage to get around barriers that separate parallel universes that satisfy certain requirements, and then incorporate that data into the VR system's scenario constructor, therefore peering and interfering with another universe. Peering and interfering with another universe can cause some disturbances, making it so universes start to combine with each other and warp space-time itself. What is actually a VR training headset is nothing less than that of the external observation of and interference with that group of parallel universes. God, even if Metal Gear Solid 2's Snake Tales didn't involve Kojima in any writer's capacity, it certainly still feels like it was. Stuff with this utter multi-dimensional jargon gibberish. So yeah, turns out in non-canonical, barely tangentially fragmented manners, the Metal Gear series quite foolishly deals with parallel universes, giving a facade of explanation for all the dumb contradictions in the series, and the easiest yet most convoluted scapegoat for any writer given a helm of the series. It's wild, and I think it even ties into Acid, its sequel, and Peace Walker's side content. But don't quote me on that, because I haven't actually played Acid 1, nor the sequel. However, none of that has hella much to do with Ghost Babel, outside of the fun Raiden VR contradictions, so I'm gonna shift back to that Ghost Babel for a much more simpler piece, and so I don't feel like as much of a lunatic. Actually, there isn't much more nonsense left for me to regale. Ah! Did you know that Ghost Babel features a sound test mode, like many old games? However, what's unique about this sound test mode is it is boring. It doesn't house any secrets. I mean, is that even a possibility? I guess the game has a debug mode, which you can activate with a Game Shark or a Game Genie, that allows the player to go immediately to any screen or scenario within. However, that's not out of the ordinary. Oh yeah, here's a good little tidbit to end on. My childhood loneliness. Yes, that's right. Metal Gear Ghost Babel does feature a full multiplayer versus mode, on top of those crammed in VR missions and special iterations of each stage. I mean, fuck. How did they cram so much in? I know I keep hammering this point, but it's just overflowing with everything. As for the multiplayer itself, it's pretty good actually, at least from the footage that I can see. It's the first of its kind in all of the Metal Gear experience, predating that even of the multiplayer within the aptly titled Metal Gear Solid Online. But still, it's on the Game Boy Color of all things. Of course, as I mentioned before, I never got to experience this multiplayer firsthand. As, you know, I needed another Game Boy, and another copy of Metal Gear Solid, and a link cable, and an entire another fucking person. But from this gameplay footage, it looks rad, and certainly does leave the impression that I maybe missed out a little bit on this one. And, that's about it, as far as junk that I know. I hope that was enough information to satiate your useless knowledge-craving mind matter, because it certainly fulfilled my necessary Metal Gear shilling quota for the foreseeable future. All in all, I hope you had a good time with me, and whether you learned some little new tidbit of Metal Gear lore, or somehow already knew every bit of information revealing your utter freakazoid nature in the process, I hope you enjoyed the ride that Ghost Babel offered all the same. Maybe you enjoyed the ride enough even to give the game a go, to check out of your own. It really is just a phenomenal fucking game, and it deserves more than the status it currently holds as a piece of esoterica and a footnote of the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Well, like I said, that's about it for now. I've never really done this before, unscripted end segment, but I figured why not? It was fun looking, actually, through all the annals of Ghost Babel's, like, ridiculous history and stuff. While I didn't learn a ton of new information, or anything really out there unusual, it was still fun to learn just even a little bit about something I loved. And I hope to make shorter, less unraveled videos later. So, yeah, take care. Thanks so much, loves, and remember to treat yourself every once in a while. You've earned it. Jane and Tara.